Arlington Colt football in 1970 and 71 saw some of the most meaningful games and wins since 1951. A couple of heartbreaking losses in the second round of the playoffs certainly didn't diminish what these teams set off to accomplish. Let's tee it up now and kick off some memorable Colt football from those seasons. Expectations were nothing but high for the 1970 squad representing District 7 4A. After all, they finished 9-1 the season before under coach John Riddell and had 19 lettermen returning with 10 starters back on both sides of the ball. To a man, this team was ready for that September opener.
If we continued to work hard, if everything came into place with the coach's leadership and the guys were just loving each other, that we would be fine. And we had a really good chance of doing something special.
You know, we went 9-1 the year before, and we had just started running the wishbone the year before, and then we got into this year, and we had run it over and over. We knew that we could score.
He wanted us to be the quarterback. He said, I can put anybody back there if I'm just going to hand the ball off. And so I really admired him for that. He gave us an opportunity to be a major part of the football team. But we spent study hall learning how to play quarterback.
A lot of people would say it was hard, but he paid a lot of attention to detail. We didn't have a lot of plays, but the ones that we did, we ran over and over. And he wanted to make sure that when he called a play, we were going to run it and run it right. And if we ran it right, they basically couldn't stop us. That and the fact that he was just the kind of guy that, you know, you knew where you stood with him.
3 new coaches were assisting Riddell this year: Bill Carter, Hugh McCrabb, and Wendell Lackey. The Ponies kicked off the season at home September 11th against Waco Richfield and cruised to a 42-14 win. 2 more victories would follow over Fort Worth Paschal and Western Hills. You couldn't have asked for a better start. As in years past, if fans didn't arrive early at Memorial Stadium, you'd be hard-pressed to grab a seat come kickoff. It was truly a fun city event on Friday nights with Tom Vandegrift at the mic and Little Arlie roaming the sidelines. The winning ways continued for the Colts through homecoming, and the only scare was a narrow 14-13 win over Bell at home before a full house of over 10,000. It was a cold, rainy night and more than 8,000 on hand at Memorial Stadium to see the Colts stampede to a 48-6 win.
It's always important to beat Sam Houston. That was a big game if we'd been 0-7, you know. I mean, that was going to be a big game.
It was just a matter of us taking care of business. They played hard, we played hard. We just had more firepower than they did.
The record now a perfect 10-0 heading into the playoffs. The first opponent in the playoff round, the Scots of Highland Park. It was Arlington's first playoff game in 19 years. A coin toss was needed for the site, and Highlander Stadium was chosen. The only thing Highland Park won this night was a coin toss. The game never in doubt. The Colt offense piled up more than 300 yards, but the defense put up an iron curtain, providing a 22-0 shutout. It was on to the regionals now, and a date with Odessa Permian at Shotwell Stadium in Abilene. Both teams carried a record of 11-0 into this battle. 16,000 turned out this afternoon on November the 28th. The Colts needed a break, but just couldn't get one as Permian ended Arlington's season shutting out the squad 22-0.
We felt like we could go a long way in the playoffs, and of course we hit Permian, who they were in the playoffs every year and always did well.
They were very good. They eventually won the state championship, so we lost to the state champion.
A sad ending for the seniors, but in the end, nothing but pride wearing the Colt uniform.
Oh my goodness, John, there's so many memories. I loved playing for Arlington High School. I always wanted to put on that uniform, and I always wanted to have that helmet with those horseshoes on the side of my head. I wanted to be Rusty Workman when I was 12 years old. I wanted to play and be a part of that because it was such an integral part of the city.
The whole atmosphere around it, especially that year, pep rallies and the games, and you know, the fact that we were doing well. I think that's what you look back at, and playing with the guys. The ones I see, and I talk to a lot of them, and they're still friends, always will be. That's what you look back at. You don't look back and say, well, we should have done this or we should have done that. What it does look back and say, hey, we had a good time playing. When you're winning like we were for 3 years, you have a good time.
The 71 Colt squad was hoping to pick up where the 70 team left off. There was no doubt a lot of returning players were capable of getting the job done. 2 early victories over Waco Richfield and Fort Worth Paschal gave the team some early confidence.
Texas football had us ranked next to the last in district. We lost a lot of the leaders off of that 70 team, and we didn't know what we had when we started the season. We felt like we had the best coaching staff in the state, bar none.
Week 3 set up a showdown with the Gophers of Grand Prairie, Arlington's bitter rival going back to the 30s. Rain and a howling wind didn't make it easy at the Gopher Bowl, but in the end, Cliff Malkowski's field goal was the difference. 10-7 the final.
You know, the footing was terrible. Of course, I had a great holder, John Hensey. Yeah, I was really shaky on that field goal, kicking it in the rain and everything, but it cleared. I don't know how much, probably not too much. I'd kicked longer field goals, but never really in that condition.
The perfection continued with a string of victories over Trinity, MacArthur, Lamar, and Irving. Those first 7 games saw the Colt offense average 36 points a game and the defense allowing just 8. No question, this Pony Express was on a roll and Colt fever was hotter than donut grease. 3 games left now for a perfect 10-0 season. Doug Wood, Craig Hayes, John Hensey, and a suffocating defense took care of Bell, Nimitz, and Sam Houston. Mission accomplished for Coach Riddell and the squad. A clean slate heading into the playoffs and a state ranking of number 4. North Mesquite was the first opponent Arlington would face. Close to 11,000 on hand at Memorial Stadium to see 2 teams that had never met before. The Arlington offense marched for touchdowns on their first 2 possessions and never looked back. Over 360 yards of total offense and a solid 21-7 victory. Next up, a date with the Coyotes of Wichita Falls, who had beaten Abilene Cooper the night before, also to advance. Between 1937 and 1971, nobody played high school football quite like Wichita Falls. They had won 6 state championships, sent players to powerhouse colleges, and ran up scores with their single-wing offense. The Colts were hoping to be the fly in the ointment on this November 27th. It was number 2 against number 3. Game day weather, temperatures in the low 60s. It was clear but very, very windy at game's end. Over 16,000 on hand for this showdown. 5,000 of those made the trip from Arlington. 80% of the Wichita's offense was led by senior Ronnie Littleton, who could score in a variety of ways. That was quite evident the entire game. His 3 touchdown runs heading into the 4th quarter made it 21-0. He wasn't finished. A 79-yard punt return for a score would make it 28-0 with just under 8 minutes to play. Over that span for the Colts, as far as comebacks go, it had to rank right up there with Lazarus coming back from the dead. Arlington is finally given a chance, and they get on the board when Doug Wood hits John Hensey on a 29-yard touchdown pass. Then, in the blink of an eye, Wood finds pay dirt from 9 yards out. A safety shortly thereafter pulls Arlington that much closer, 28-15. No one sitting down at this point, and just minutes later, John Hensey is on the receiving end of another Wood pass, 28-22. The Colts weren't done yet, believe it or not, and who could? Another safety for Arlington occurs when Ronnie Littleton is tackled in the end zone, 28-24. Just under 2 minutes left in the game. With just seconds remaining on the board, it finally comes to an end when Wood is sacked trying to go deep to put Arlington ahead. The great Bobby Lane said it best, "I never lost a game, time just ran out." That was so true in Arlington's case. Wichita Falls running back Gary Lancaster could clearly see an Arlington comeback that could have easily ended their season.
Oh yes, we were really worried. People had actually started leaving after we scored the 4th touchdown. But then when they scored that first touchdown and then they scored another touchdown, I mean, the fans got really nervous and us players got really, really nervous too. Because we, on offense, we were just trying to run out the clock. We couldn't do anything offensively.
Sports writer Kenny Hand, who covered the game for the Arlington Citizen Journal, still has thoughts of what he saw that afternoon.
John, I think that 71 team was good enough to play San Antonio Lee. I think Arlington proved in the game they lost to Wichita Falls. They could have put on just about as good an effort and maybe even beaten San Antonio Lee in that game. But when it was 28-0 and Arlington came back with 24 points in a condensed amount of time, there were probably a lot of nervous people in the stands on the Wichita Falls side that said, you know, if we don't do something pretty quick, Arlington may advance.
Coach Waddell would leave Arlington High after the 71 season and take a job at Midland High. His 5-year record at Arlington was an eye-popping 48-14-2. The Colts would make the playoffs the following year under Coach Bill Carter, but then 9 campaigns would pass before Arlington would qualify for an extra game. The 2-year record of 22-2 for those teams was impressive then, and it still holds up today when not that many teams qualified for the playoffs. Looking back, you'd be hard-pressed to find another successful stampede from those representing the green and white.